Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I speak as a resident of Buntingford and a county councillor for the area. Um, Firstly, my comments that I against this application that I mentioned at the previous meeting still stand. I don't propose to repeat those. You heard them all in November. Nothing's changed. It still stands. But my concern, and I will start, if I may, with a question. I mean, it has actually been answered. I don't agree with the answer. I don't expect an answer either way, but members may like to answer the same. Why has this application come back to committee when the decision on it was made in November? There are no material differences since November, in my opinion, that affects members' decision. They spent 3.5 hours debating this application and formed their decision. The decision that you made in November reflected the policies in the district, the neighbourhood and the NPPF at the time of your decision. The fact that a revised NPPF was produced in December cannot be considered a material difference, as this was well after the decision was made. In my opinion, the ICB are still unsure on the proposed location of the new doctor's surgery. They still have reservations and are still awaiting a sound and complete business plan. And I think they'd be more supportive of the location if all other areas for a possible site had been considered. The fact that the doctor's surgery partners unwisely signed a legal agreement with Taylor Wimpey that stopped them looking for any alternative sites or have dialogue with the current freeholder of the existing premises, I believe was a very unwise decision and left them with their hands tied. And I'm really disappointed with Taylor Wimpey and for the doctor's partners for agreeing and signing that legal agreement, which stopped them looking for alternative locations. I know that the freeholder has offered to discuss with the partners a new lease period and look at expansion of the existing surgery, which is in a much more suitable location in the centre of the town, with a large public car park within a few hundred metres away of the surgery. Unfortunately, unless she refuses this application, that can't be pursued due to that legal agreement. That's the way I read it. It appears to me that your planning officers are using every tool available to them to influence members to approve their recommendation so that they can improve their current deficit in their 5-year housing land supply. Why should the residents of Buntingford have to suffer with development in an inappropriate and unsustainable location outside of the town? It sits outside of the town boundary through the fault of this council, where they are currently in the situation where they are not being able to demonstrate 5-year housing land supply. Members, you are the decision makers, not the officers. The officers are here to present the details of the application and their recommendation. They're here to answer your questions from members and assist in your reasons for your decision, not to influence your decision. This was clear at the November meeting. Officers were trying their damnedest to influence your decision. And I would ask that you once again stick with your original decision in November and refuse the application. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, next we have sharing the 6 minutes. We have James Orton Malian on behalf of Taylor Wimpey as the applicant, and Dr. Kumar Mukherjee, the GP surgery representative. Both of them speaking for the application.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. My name is James Orton Malian from Taylor Wimpey, and I'm speaking alongside Dr. Kumar Mukherjee from the Buntingford and Puckeridge Medical Practice. In November last year, we presented our proposals for a mixed-use development, including the delivery of an urgently needed new doctor's surgery and up to 200 new homes, 40% of which will be affordable. Our proposal directly addresses two critical challenges facing East Hertfordshire: healthcare provision and housing shortage, the context of which has changed since we last presented to this committee in November. Firstly, we are pleased to confirm that this location has in principle support from the Hertfordshire and West Essex Integrated Care Board, the ICB, for a new medical practice. After an independent appraisal of all site options in the town, the ICB confirmed that Hare Street Road is the most suitable location for this new medical facility to meet the needs of the existing and growing population. The thorough review of potential alternative locations considered a range of criteria such as viability, affordability, deliverability, and the adaptability for future housing growth, and concluded that this was the most suitable and their preferred option in the town. To reiterate, the land for the medical practice will be subject to a restrictive covenant safeguarding the use of the land as a medical facility in perpetuity, which adds further certainty to the proposals. The completion of the ICB's appraisal and confirmation of their support in principle for the land north of Hare Street Road should be reason to resolve any doubt regarding the suitability of the site and end speculation about the possibility of the delivery of the new medical centre on any other sites in Buntingford. The second material change since November is the mandatory housing targets that came into effect following updates to the NPPF in December 24. These updates emphasise the importance of developments like ours in helping East Hertfordshire meet its revised annual target of 1,328 homes per annum. This scheme also commits to deliver 40% affordable housing and 5% self and custom build homes, which creates opportunities for people at every stage of life to access the housing market. The government has made it abundantly clear through the updates to the NPPF and written ministerial statements that new housing is essential in this country to help combat the chronic housing shortage that exists. Further supplementing this material information and in response to comments made by members during the November committee, the supplemental accessibility note that has been submitted is referenced in the officer's report and sets out the following key points. 1. Details of the newly introduced 36A bus route connecting Buntingford with Bishop Stortford and further enhances the accessibility to the surgery of the wider community. The implementation of the new bus stop directly outside the entrance to the surgery on Hare Street Road, which is also able to connect into this bus route in due course. And 3, confirmation of the gradient of Hare Street Road falling within acceptable parameters of walking and cycling. We believe that this well-considered, policy-compliant, sustainable scheme that delivers much-needed new homes and infrastructure for the town of Buntingford is recommended for approval by East Herts planning officers and has the support in principle of the ICB, should be supported by this committee. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing us to speak on behalf of the Buntingford Surgery. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity and set out our priorities for the medical centre. I'd like to speak about missed opportunity. We're here under unprecedented circumstances as we have a very critical decision for the future of healthcare for Buntingford, and not just for Buntingford, but our surrounding population. So what are the facts? Our building is no longer fit for purpose. Originally built for 6,400 patients, we accommodate around 1,100. We overwork the doctors, sometimes seeing 40 patients a day when our BMA recommendation is of around 25. Further population growth is expected to be around 30% with a list size of 1,400. We need a plan now. Appraisal for potential sites have been a 10-year process for us, and we've been fully transparent about it. We undertook professional specialist advice to source land and conduct factual appraisals that have led to this planning meeting today. This work confirms that the land in the centre of town does not meet as a suitable future medical practice and does not meet our needs. All other sites, including our existing practice, do not meet our standard. Space to build, space for parking, and potential expansion. We've tried to contact our current landlord multiple times, but we have had no response in this. If the application is approved tonight, we'll be able to provide more face-to-face appointments, better local facilities, and train the next generation of doctors, and net travel to further locations will be reduced. What happens if we don't build? A decrease in service, quite frankly. We'll have less appointments, less extra appointments for phlebotomy, physio, and other healthcare professionals. A few points that were raised. I hope you are clear now that the ICB is very supportive of our practice. They have conducted their own independent survey and come up with their own appraisal for this process, and they understand the gravitas of the situation and are very supportive of us at the moment. We've had continued misinformation about the financing of this building. We as partners solely take personal liability of funding with costs into the millions. It is a perceived notion that the NHS will fund and build this project, and that is simply incorrect. Finally, on accessibility. Our own survey of patients shows that the majority of the population and wider population that we cater to drives. When you're unwell and worried, we choose the quickest and easiest mode of transport, and they wish to park with ease. Again, I come back to missed opportunity. We've been given a second chance today to do what is right for healthcare for our community. Not for today, but just for future generations. We desperately need this building, and I hope we can work together to develop a medical centre as the first phase of the development. I strongly urge you to support this case. Thank you.
Next, we have Councillor Duncan Wallace representing Buntingford Town Council. And you have 6 minutes too.
Good evening, Chair, Committee. Buntingford Town Council are disappointed to find ourselves once again addressing committee so soon after their previous determination on this matter in November 2024. It will therefore come as no surprise that our submission remains unchanged in that the application remains premature. Many aspects continue to lack detail and clarity, whilst many questions raised at the previous hearing remain unanswered. I again submit the opinion that for committee to demonstrate due diligence towards its responsibilities, they must be availed of all information sufficiently detailed and informative to best equip them to determine such important decisions in an objective and informed manner. Whilst we are aware that the DMC's determination that night was in contravention to the recommendation of officers and that alternate avenues were still available to the applicant moving forward, we have been surprised by the path chosen by officers to deliver an alternate determination in line with their recommendations, one which they have pursued with apparent vigour, determination and focus. The administration's officers, of course, have a pivotal role and function to advise and give guidance and direction to members on legal and procedural aspects of the process, applying their acknowledged professional expertise and experience. However, if that aspect is to be the sole avenue of evaluation and assessment, the question must be asked, what is the purpose of the DMC and its elected members? Is it merely to tick a box and approve officer recommendations, even if at variance with their judgment? What do we say to those we represent who afford us the ultimate privilege through the democratic process, that your views are irrelevant, as it is the government process and local officers who actually determine the outcomes? As an elected representative, I have a responsibility to voice those views of the community. With over 730 objections and only 33 in support of the proposals, the mandate given has been unquestionably clear. If DMC and the planning process are to command the respect and support of the electorate, members must be afforded the freedom to balance the direction of officers against those representations from the community, its representatives, and their own judgment. It is my submission that the role of the DMC is vitally important if administrations are to manage growth responsibly and create communities for future generations that are sustainable and which will thrive and prosper. The current proposals conflict with the district plan, in particular, key settlement policies DPS2, DPS3. They are contrary to Buntingford's own neighbourhood plan, which specifically seeks to conserve the landscape in question. And whilst the current 5-year land supply situation influences their weight, they remain valuable documents within their projected lifespans. Clearly, the provision of a new health facility is substantive to the current proposals and is influential when applying the tilted balanced assessment. Much has and continues to be made of there being no alternative, but it is our view that this situation was engineered, the medical practice and developers choosing a path, effectively closing the door to objective debate on alternate avenues. A conscious business decision by educated professional people to embark on a specific strategy. This has only added to local community tension on the issue, with one resident recently referring to it as morally abhorrent. The proposed location of the medical centre is far from ideal. As such, critical infrastructure should be easily accessible across a range of sustainable mobility and transport options. Again, the district plan policy, TRA1, requires such proposals to be sited in places which enable sustainable journeys to key services. Any infrastructure assessment must surely begin with What is it intended to deliver, and is it in the best place to deliver it? Not, it was the only place it could go. As a councillor, I aspire the very best for our community and welcome investment in our town. However, not at any cost, and many feel the proposals come at too high a price, that the adverse impact does demonstrably outweigh the benefit and is the product of a manipulated process many perceive to be underhand and lacking transparency. So what is the value of the Buntingford landscape with its Rib Valley location and eastern boundary defined by the Widial Plateau Ridge? Cherished assets which take decades, even centuries, to establish and evolve and are identified for protection, which would appear to be irrelevant considerations the minute community infrastructure is offered. Important decisions, and ones upon which we all hope history will not judge our generation too harshly. The documented lack of engagement with ICB, particularly during project conception, added to the recent mixed information during correspondence, only supports a theory of anything to get it across the line, reducing further confidence that such important decisions are being made in a controlled, measured and objective manner. Much is made of the ICB's recent positional shift, but worryingly that shift only supports, in principle, the proposal with no guarantee of delivery. It remains our opinion that the current application is premature. The proposals and recommendations are rushed and do not provide opportunity for a comprehensive, balanced consideration. The engineered path chosen by the applicant, effectively restricting debate and transparency, is, we feel, a conscious move at influencing or removing the impartiality of DMC to make objective determinations with freedom of opinion and without bias. We strongly urge members to reinforce their original decision and reject the proposals as currently presented. Thank you, committee.
Okay, next we have the ward councillors, district ward councillors. We've got Councillor Sue Nichols and Vicky Burt is going first. No, Sue, sorry. So you've got 5 minutes.
The officer's report lists a number of reasons relating to material changes to planning policies and new evidence to justify the Hare Street Road planning application being brought back to the committee. However, multiple other valid policy and material considerations still form a really strong basis on which to again reject this application. On planning policy, the significant need for housing, both nationally and in East Herts, has not changed since the November meeting. More housing is still required, and this is not a new issue. Conflicts with many of the planning policies within the Buntingford Community Neighbourhood and East Herts District plans do remain, as does the considerable harm that would be caused if this application were approved. Despite being on a tilted balance, these considerations still have considerable relevance and need to be weighed in the decision-making process when deciding this planning application. This is what the committee did in November. The application conflicts with the following policies within the current East Herts District plan. The site is outside of Buntingford's existing urban area in which development is allowed under policy DPS2, and Buntingford is not included in the list of towns for possible urban extension set out in policy DPS3. The application conflicts with Bunt 1, which specifies where development should take place in Buntingford. The site is designated as rural area beyond the Green Belt, and the building of a large medical centre or housing estate are not listed in the 8 acceptable categories for permitted development within policy GBR2. The application also conflicts with key policies in the Buntingford Community Area Neighbourhood Plan. The proposed site sits on land outside of the designated area specified in policy HD1, on which development of this kind is acceptable. It also conflicts with policies ES1 and HD2, designed to maintain the setting of Buntingford within the Rib Valley in the context of the Buntingford community area and prevent development that would have a harmful effect on the landscape. The policy also states that all new housing developments should be sensitive to the landscape and to be of a height that doesn't impact adversely on views from the surrounding countryside. Maintaining and preserving the Rib Valley setting of the town is fundamental in retaining its character. It is a serious concern that the proposed development would extend the built-up area of Buntingford outside of the River Valley onto the top of the Widial Plateau Ridge, breaching the eastern edge of the existing developed area. This important principle was established during the development of the existing district plan and when the neighbouring Taylor Wimpey estate was approved. In the latest officer's report, the adverse impact on the landscape from the development is only rated as moderate after 15 years. The impact would actually be major adverse from the start and permanent because it would take the urban development out of the Rib Valley and on top of the Widyl Plateau. The ICB letter received by East Herts Planning on the 20th of December implies that they have reviewed all options for the relocation of the GP practice and been in close dialogue with the applicant site promoters of all other potential sites in the town. I would question whether all potential sites have been considered. It's clear from my email exchange with the owner of the current medical practice site that no previous discussions have taken place with him concerning his proposal to develop and expand the existing medical centre. And it's only in the last couple of weeks that he has managed to open any dialogue with the ICB. He hasn't at any stage been able to hold talks with the GP practice. Have the possibilities for other sites owned by the practice been explored, most notably the Standon and Puckeridge surgery? Do the plans for a new, much larger medical practice on the Hare Street Road site mean that the Standon and Puckeridge surgery will close completely, meaning staff and patients currently registered with that practice would also have to travel to Buntingford? It also needs to be stated that the ICB's position on the proposed relocation of the medical centre did not form part of the reasons for refusal, and that officers did not consider the ICB's position to be relevant to the decision in their report for the November meeting. The clear conflicts with many policies within the neighbourhood and district plans, together with the uncertainties about the lack of thorough investigation of suitable alternative sites, the possibility of developing and expanding the current site, and the additional reasons that Councillor Burt will give in her speech give substantial reasons which to justify the refusal of this planning application.
The questions raised by residents and local councillors around the accessibility and sustainability of this planning application remain. Concerns persist around the proposal to move the town's only medical practice from a centrally located, easily accessible and level site to one at the top of a steep hill on the edge of town. This move would see a large proportion of people swapping walking for car journeys in order to access their primary healthcare needs, adding to local traffic and challenging the sustainability of the proposal. Taylor Wimpey's recently submitted transport briefing note attempts to address some of these concerns, but the justifications and evidence outlined within it do not adequately resolve the concerns voiced by the local community. The steepness of the hill leading up to the proposed medical centre is discussed in the briefing note and refers to the County Council's design guide on gradients for roads and footpaths for new developments. It states that the maximum target gradient for any route should be 1 in 20. It's stated in Taylor Wimpey briefing note that there is a short section of the route which is steeper than 1 in 20. This means that the whole route in fact fails to comply with HCC design guide and also the Active Travel England guidance on which the Hertfordshire County Council design guide is based, which states that there should be level points for every half metre of elevation. This means there would need to be 48 level sections on the hill that rises by 24 metres from the bottom of Hare Street Road to the proposed medical centre. The briefing note also states that since the submission of the original transport information, bus services have been recently supplemented by additional bus routes 36, 36A, providing an hourly service linking the site to the centre of town. This is incorrect. It is only the 36A part of the service which serves Hare Street Road, and there are only 4 journeys a day, the last one being at 12:52. Although the 331 also serves the road, it passes through Hare Street at almost the same time as the 36A. In reality, the very limited public transport provision and inaccessibility of the site at the top of the hill means that this application is in contravention of policy TRA1, which requires that development should primarily be located in places that enable sustainable journeys to be made in key services and facilities. The Herts Links bus is also mentioned in the note. This is an existing on-demand only service with no fixed schedule and no guarantee of availability on the day and time needed to book a journey to and from the proposed new medical centre. Alongside this, at times these services are unreliable and don't arrive on time, if at all. In the last week alone, I've had several personal experiences of this on several occasions. There are also major concerns around Hare Street Road being the only vehicular route from Buntingford to the proposed site. This road is often completely closed to traffic, as it was from the 15th to the 20th of January. Any disruption caused on Hare Street Road would be disastrous. The shortest alternative route to access the proposed site from the bottom of Hare Street Road in Buntingford are either via the A10, the unclassified Hay Street Road, Hare Street and Hare Street Road, a round trip of around 14 miles, or via Vicarage Road and the narrow and difficult Whittier Road, Hare Street and Hare Street Road, which is the same distance. The closure, most recently, was due to the water pipe leaking in 3 places and damaging the gas pipe and causing parts of the road to completely collapse. People on Hare Street Road and the Taylor Wimpey development were left without water for most of the day on the 11th and the 15th of January. Concerns are raised as to whether the current infrastructure in its fragile state can deal with another 200 homes and a medical centre. In addition, there are many other concerns previously raised by a large number of local residents, including the loss of high-quality agricultural land, the town's crumbling infrastructure, lack of local employment opportunities, and the reliance on unsustainable car journeys due to inadequate local bus services and the lack of a train station, which are not addressed in comments in the office's reports.
Thank you. Right, members. I'm going to open the debate now and first of all, I'd like to remind members that we should be discussing and considering material considerations at all times. Councillor Copley.
Thank you. I just wondered if we could start by kind of looking at the overarching kind of NPPF and other planning considerations. I've got one question for the officers. I know obviously since we last looked at this, there have been changes to the NPPF, and one of them talks about schemes should be granted permission unless policies in the framework provide a strong reason for refusal. It was previously clear reason. And I just wondered whether that had an impact and any kind of other impact in terms of our thinking as well. Thank you.
Who wants to answer that?
Well, I think probably that section of the NPPF is not necessarily a major change in that the kind of tilted balance, the kind of phraseology around that in terms of that so for instance, the key one, paragraph 11, any adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits.